want you to feel comfortable.
Thank you. I think I'm good to go. Yeah. So this is what we are doing today. Um, yeah, a little bit more of an abstract-y painting compared to what we normally do. Um, so if you'd like to take a photo before we start, and then we will get started in a minute here.
Thanks. So are you able to zoom in at all? Just because it's hard
Um,
or just even,
oh,
yeah, that's better.
okay. Oh. Okay, that's about as close as I can get.
Okay, and I'll put you on speaker. Not that my stuff looks anything like yours anyways, but maybe a fuzzy image is as close as I get.
Yeah, my camera's not the best.
That's okay.
I I've got a bit of uh a very duct taped together setup, we'll say.
That's okay.
All right. So this is what we're doing today. You will need a pencil and eraser to start off. And it is a little bit more abstract, so if it looks a little bit blurry, then it's probably from that as well as my camera. Um, so we will get started in just a minute here. All right. Um, like always for pastels, I do suggest a blank piece of paper folded on the side for cleaning off your pastels and swatching your colors. And we will get going. All right, so this is what we are doing today. Uh, a nice snowy townscape here. And yeah, if you want to take a photo, we will, yeah, we're gonna get going here. So we're gonna be starting off with some pencil, and our pencil is gonna be very light today. So we're just kind of going to add in kind of some placement lines more than anything, if my camera will focus properly. There we go. Okay, so we're starting off with a bit of like a swoopy line, and this is just our like background hill line here. And then we are going to add in our lake shore here. Just like that. So most of our lines here are just kind of placeholders, and because lots of it is very snowy, then most of our lines are going to be um, kind of guesswork after we fill in all the snow. So we're just putting in kind of a rough idea of what the town is going to look like. So the way that I draw my houses in for this, I'm doing this on another piece of paper to just to show you a little bit bigger. I kind of do two lines and then the roof, and then add in three lines going like this. Well, four, because that one too. So that's kind of how we're doing all of our houses. Very kind of simple. Um, for whoever just showed up, this is what we're doing today. Yep. Okay. So we'll keep going here, adding in our houses, and you can kind of put these in wherever you'd like. So um, you can kind of add them in being very like front on, like very short on one side, or having them completely sideways. So the way I do that is I kind of have this shape for the roof and then add in the bottom like that. So you kind of want to just fill in lots of the space on our paper here with a bunch of little houses. And they kind of look a little bit silly, um, but because it's a little bit more of an abstract piece today, you can kind of get away with making them look a little bit silly. So like the ones at the top of the hill here, I'm just going to make this shape. And you can make them like really short. We're just trying to fill up a lot of the space of the town here. And we're actually going to add in our clock tower next, which is kind of like half of it is one really big house like this. And then the other half is really tall. And for the clock tower, I have it pointed on both roofs here. And then I just draw the line between them and add in a line there for the roof. And you can add in little triangles like that to show the back as well. But you won't really be able to see those when we add in all of our pastels. And then I add in our clock face, and that's how I do the clock tower. So most of this is just adding in, like I said, a lot of random houses. But also I added in triangles like this, and these are to show pine trees. So I kind of added them in anywhere. And this is just, like I said, more like placeholder sketching, right? So lots of it is just adding in the basic shapes of what we're putting in our piece. Um, there are a lot of people who joined, so just in a second, I will show you our final product. And then, yeah. So this here is our final product that we are making today. A bit of an abstract snowy town. Um, yeah, so right now we're just putting in some pencil. So this is kind of um, where my final sketches will kind of be. Maybe add in like a couple of small trees, but that's kind of it for all of the pencil that we are adding today. And when you are done your sketch, make sure to take your eraser and just kind of erase the really, really dark lines just to make them a little bit lighter. And this is it for our pencil. So I'll just wait for a second for people to catch up. All right, so we're gonna start on the pastel. And we're going to be starting off with our sky here. So for the sky, I used four different colors. I used a light blue, that color. I used kind of a medium blue, a darker blue, and kind of a dark blue purple color. It's a little bit more purple in person. Um, but those are the four colors that I used for the sky. Um, and the way I did this is pretty simple. So I started off with my lightest color and added in kind of an outline of all of the buildings that go across like the back of our town here. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but just adding in kind of an outline for all the buildings. Then I kind of kind of using that circular motion that we've been using, kind of going around um, the edge of everything. I'm doing the circles very loosely as we are going to be mixing all of this oil pastel. So you're kind of just trying to get a lot of oil pastel on the page and not worrying about how much it's covering the paper. And you want there to be quite a bit of this light blue as it'll blend in a lot. And we will be doing this with our next colors as well. So adding in the next darkest blue, doing the circles around everything. And then with our next darkest blue, and our final color. So there are a couple of different ways you can blend pastels. I've told you about using your fingers and paper. You can also use paper towel to blend. So it's not going to work as well as your finger, but if you scrunch up a paper towel like this and go in circular motions, you can kind of get the same effect without getting pastel all over your hands. So you want to go in a circular motion, just like the pastels that we put down. But you want to go in really tight circles over everything that we've done. And that's kind of what you want your sky to look like. And if you go over any buildings or anything, it's all right because we will be adding those on top. You do want to avoid it as much as possible so you can see I'm still leaving quite a bit of paper visible. Um, Even though I could have gone completely over top of those. And that just makes it a little bit easier for us to add in some detail. And if you're using paper towel like me, you might need to switch out your piece of paper towel. So I just take a fresh piece here and I fold it up a bunch and I use this corner kind of as my blending tool. And you might not be able to see it completely, but when we're using the paper towels, it does give you quite the cool texture. So I'll just show you a little bit up close as my paper is taped down. So you can kind of see like swirls in your design like that. It's a little bit clearer if you're using multiple colors, but you can kind of see a slight swirl look to your pastels. And I really like that about a paper towel. So our next step is going to be the lake. I'll wait for a second before we start doing that. But I'll show you the colors that I'm going to be using. Because this is a little bit of a different technique. We're kind of learning something a little bit new. So you want to leave out your light blue and your medium blue. So those are the two kind of colors that you want to keep out for now. And I am grabbing oh, a medium green as well. So these are the three colors we are using for the lake. Light blue, a medium blue, and a green. Oh, also, um, I snapped my light blue in half by accident. And so I used just a little bit of painter's tape and wrapped it around. And it doesn't stop it from like breaking again, but it kind of holds your pastel together a little bit more. Um, but those are the three colors we are using for the lake. And I'm going to start again with our light blue here and kind of color in most of the space of the lake. So kind of following the outline of it that we have here and then coloring it in. I then am going to do the same with this darker color, overlapping all of the light blue that we've done. So going right on top, going a little bit lighter, you can see, and we're just kind of adding in just a little bit of a darker color. So the reason we're overlapping these like this rather than like the sky is we're actually going to be mixing these three colors together on the page. So by kind of layering them all, we're getting all three of the colors at the same time. So when we mix it, it will mix all the colors together rather than going in a gradient from like darkest to lightest like we did in the sky. So you want to be kind of sparing with the green. I'm just putting in a little bit here. And that is just because we just want to slightly tint the water green. And I'm going to be using the same paper towel technique to start off with, and then I will be using my finger as I don't want the texture as much. So again, using a little bit of paper towel and going in circles. And you can see, because we layered those colors, we're getting a mixed version rather than a gradient. So with my hand here, I'm going to kind of flatten out. I'm trying to get rid of that texture from the paper towel. And this is just so the water looks a little bit more flat. Like that. And the other good thing about having paper towel present is I can kind of wipe off all of the blue on my hands. There is a lot of it. And that just keeps you from smudging the color all over the place. So the next step is going to be the snow. I'll wait for a second before I start, but I'll show you the colors. I'm using the light blue that we've had out, a white, and a gray. If you don't have a gray, you can use a darker blue or just white and blue, but it'll be You, you want to use the darker blue a little bit more sparingly, just because the gray is adding in shadows for us. So I'll wait for a second before we start the snow. All right, so our main color for the snow is going to be our white, and you kind of want to put it all over the blank space here. So you kind of want to avoid lots of the houses. Just kind of getting the ground. So because the houses, like the roofs, are also going to be covered in snow, um, we're doing those separate as we're adding in shading and blue to the snow on the ground first, just to kind of differentiate them between each other. So I'm adding white everywhere. And if your pastels are getting low, make sure you rip off as little paper as possible. Otherwise, you're going to break yours like I broke my blue here. So I did about that much paper. And I'm just coloring in all of our snow space. And if you miss some because it's white and you can't really see, um, I'm definitely going to miss some spots as well. So we will go back and fix anything that we miss. Also, it's nice to have white paper for snow things because it's all white underneath, right? All right, our next step is going to be with our gray here. And what I'm going to do with the gray is kind of outline the bases of all of our buildings. So I'm just adding in little bits of gray. And I'm going to be putting them up here at the back a little bit, even though there's no house there, just to show a shadow behind our town buildings. So with the blue, I'm adding in just like I'm putting barely any pressure on the paper, and I'm just adding in a little bit of the blue color. And we're going to blend this into the white, so it doesn't have to be in any specific shape or anything. It's just to add, like I said, just a little bit of color to differentiate from the roofs. So now I'm going to go in with paper towel and just blend in the colors slightly. So you don't want to blend the gray too much. And you kind of want to keep them like just lightly blended into the white. And if you've got spots like this that are really blue, you can take your white and just add a little bit more pastel onto it and blend it in. So there is all of our snow blocked in. Um, the last kind of major step for this is just adding in a little bit of a clearer line between the snow and the water. So I'm just kind of going over this line with my pastel, and I'm not pressing super hard, but I'm just pressing enough that I'm getting a little bit of a like a thicker line. You can also do that if you have places where the sky and the snow meet and they look a little bit more ragged. And something else I'm going to do is take this lightest blue, and I've got a couple of spots in the sky that don't go all the way down to my snow here. So I'm just going through and I'm adding in um, that line. So a good example of this is in between these houses here is supposed to be blue. So I'm just adding in that color like that. So our next step is going to be our buildings. I'm just gonna wait for another second. Um, but our colors that we're going to be using are two different colors of brown. Um, so the reason we are using two browns is just to differentiate between some of the buildings. So it won't make much of a difference if you're only using one brown. Like for my example, I only used one brown, but just because we're using a little bit of a bigger paper, if you have more variety in the browns you're using, it'll just add a little bit more texture. So these are the two browns that I'm using. Quite a bit of a darker brown, and then a little bit of a lighter, more reddish brown. And before we start coloring in houses, you kind of want to have some flatter sides to your pastel, just to get some more fine lines. And I'm just filling in the sides of the house. So just like that. And you can kind of alternate between colors. You can also add in like a gray or a brick color, but keeping it a little bit more simple will match the more simple design of this page. So having one or two browns is my suggestion. And just fill in all the building sides. So these houses at the back, you can see they're kind of a little bit more silly looking just because they're in the background. I'm not being too particular about having the shape being perfect. Just kind of giving them the rough like triangle roof shape that we've been giving the rest of the houses or buildings. So for the clock tower in the middle, I'm going to go as much as I can around the clock face that we put in. It doesn't matter if you get a little bit of pastel, but it's just to make sure that we know where to put it. So you can see, definitely not a perfect circle, but it's just there to keep for reference for when we add in the clock. So there are all of our buildings colored in. I'll wait for just a minute or so before we continue. And we will be adding in some trees next. So you can put both of these browns away as we don't need them anymore. And you can take out whatever greens you would like. So again, like the buildings, I'm going to be taking out two greens just for a little bit of variety. Um, but because we are going rather simple on this piece, I'm kind of limiting the colors that I'm using. So I'm using a little bit more of a dull green and then a bit of a brighter green. So those are the colors, and I'll just wait for a sec before we get going on some trees. All right, so we're gonna get started on our trees here, and I'm starting with the lighter or the more vibrant green. And you kind of want to start by putting in like a stick and then kind of doing like sideways lines until you get to the bottom of your stick. So you kind of want to keep the same shape as the triangles that we had in place. So I'm doing a line down the middle of them and then adding in some kind of sporadic branches to our trees. And you do want to mix up the colors a little bit. Oh, just adding in different greens. And I am going to add in a couple more trees, other than what we have planned, just to kind of fill out our space a little bit more. And you can make them bigger than you planned or smaller. And those are our trees. So for our next step, I'm going to be using yellow, and I'm going to be using two different colors of yellow. So I've got a very light yellow and then a little bit of a darker yellow. You want to keep your yellows pretty light, as these are just going to be the lights in all of our houses. These are the yellows I'm using. Um, so these are just going to be like windows and things like that. We're going to be coloring in our clock tower with this. And yeah, I'll just wait for another minute and then we will put some lights into our town. So with these two colors, you kind of want to mix them up the same as what we've been doing. Um, but I'm starting by adding in our clock face here with the lighter yellow. And then I'm just going to kind of add in little dots for all of our lighting stuff. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just adding in little spots of light. So they're just windows. And for this, it's going to be a little bit hard to get them to be like completely square. So yeah, they're a little bit more abstract. And you might need to clean off your pastels quite a bit, like I am. So our next step here is just going to be adding in some paths to our town. So for this, I'm using the medium blue that we've been using quite a bit. This color, not the lightest color of blue that we have, but this one. And for this, you want to go very light because we're going to blend it all and just kind of add in some lines. They're going to look a little messy. Um, but yeah, so I'm just adding in a little bit of some lines here. And then I'm going to go through with just a little bit of paper towel or your finger and just blend them into the snow a little bit. So it won't change a whole lot. It's just adding a little bit of dimension to our snow here. Just to add a little bit of more variation to our snow. So now we're kind of going to add in all of our snow. So on top of roofs here, I'm drawing in just thin lines of things Um, adding in like all of the white or on top of our buildings. And you don't need to do this for all of the buildings, just this is more for touching up lines and adding in snow to the back buildings there. So while we have the white out, I'm also going to add snow on top of all of our trees. And the way that I'm going to do that is just by kind of dabbing my pastel on top of them. So you're not adding like too much white to them or anything, just to kind of cover some of the branches. So we've got a couple more steps here of just adding kind of our finishing touches. So those kind of include like snow on the lake, some snow in the sky, uh, things like that. So I'm going to start by adding in very lightly on the water here, adding in some light lines that just go right around the edge of the water here. So nothing too dark or anything, just adding in a little bit. And then I'm going to be using my finger, just blending out. You might have to do a couple of layers like this. I'm going to do a few more, and it's just lightening up our coast a little bit here. So because that didn't show up, I'm going to go a little bit darker with my white. And add in just a little bit more lightness. So this is kind of snow or a little bit of ice. So I'm starting by lighting it up, and then I'm going to take my white and add in little, like, kind of piles of snow just right by the edge of the water. And you can, if you have like a lot, you can blend them back out and add in more. I'm also going to add in a dock on our lake. So to do this, I'm just using one of the browns that we used for our houses, the darker one, and I'm doing a straight-ish line coming out from here, and then adding in a couple of lines that go down, and then taking the white and putting a line on top of it. And then taking this and kind of doing what we did for the houses, just like that. And I'm also going to add in a little bit of snow around the bottom of our dock. I'm also going to add in some snow in the sky. So I'm just doing very, very light dots. Some of them like a lot harder than others, just adding in some snow. So this is kind of our finished product here. There are some like more things you can add to it, like taking our medium-ish blue and um, adding more path to the snow to the dock here. You can add in a little bit of like spots that are a little bit darker blue in the snow. Not quite that dark, but the other thing you could do is with your pencil, pressing pretty hard with your pencil, you could add in some street lamps, just like a little loop like this, and then taking a yellow and doing just a little dot. You can add them a couple of places. I would also add in people. So just taking a black or a dark blue, and they really don't have to look like people. You can kind of add in lines, just like this, and get a couple of people in our little town here. So this is our lesson for this week. It was a little bit shorter. Um, yeah. This is our second last lesson for this year. So next week will be our final class. Um, yeah. And I was wondering if you guys would like to stick with pastels for the last lesson or go back to watercolor. Um, if you don't have a preference, we'll stick with oil pastels. But if you guys really liked watercolor, we can go back for our last lesson of the year. Um, it'll be the same like subject that we're doing. So whatever you pick, I'll change it between watercolor or pastels. Oh, that looks great. I love that. That looks really cool.
Oh, nice, Ellie.
Yeah. Yeah, if you guys have no preference, we'll keep going with some oil pastels.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
that's
That sounds good. Thanks.
sounds
All
good.
right.
As you like. Thank you.
And then we will be starting up
Fine.
on January 13th of the new year. So still on Monday, still at the same time. And we're going to be starting with some pencil.
Mhm.
Ooh, I like yours too. That's really pretty.
Sure.
Thank you guys for showing me your art. I really like to see it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I'll show you mine, even though I'm not really. There we
Oh,
go.
what do you mean? That's really good. I like it. I like all
Let's
the trees you added.
hit the sky opposite.
Oh, yeah. Maybe
Oh,
it's just a different time
nice.
of day.
Good
It's a
job.
different time. Well, I wanted to thank you all for participating in my class. I've had a lot of fun, and I hope you guys have as well. Um, of course, this isn't our last lesson, but